Nangyari po kasi, pina-explain niya muna ako, na bumabalik tayo sa interpolation, and then after ma-explain ko, pwede niyang i-amend at pwede niyang hindi. Napapahaba lang po tayo. Bakit hindi na lang po niya, Mr. President, Your Honor, sabihin na lang kung anong gusto niyang amendment, anong linya yon, and then I'll say accept or not. If I don't accept, and I'll tell good senator from Taguig why I'm not accepting. Para mapabilis lang po tayo. Kaysa naman po, babasahin niya, kailangan ko pa magpaliwanag, and then hindi siya satisfied sa paliwanag ko, then magkakaroon ng debate. At kapag halimbawa na satisfied siya sa paliwanag ko, then hindi na siya mag-amend. Humahaba lang po tayo, Mr. President, Your Honor. Kung gusto niyo po, maglatag na ako ng banig dito. Sa unan.
Welcome to legislative work, Mr. President.
No, additional, Mr. President, additional amendment not included on the list. On page 31, lines 22 to 24, after the word technology, delete the rest of the sentence. I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
May bago pa ulit. Another additional, Mr. President, on page 31, line 2, section 56, after the word government, insert the phrase shall bear the cost of medical care and quarantine expenses. I so move, Mr. President.
Mr. President,
Yes,
Yeah.
Senator Cayetano is recognized.
I'm actually trying to follow because I have amendments and might touch upon them, and I cannot follow because we're jumping. It appears that the sponsor is introducing amendments by various colleagues. I understand, no, that they have different sections, but we need to slow it down so we can follow, and it will make it easier for the sponsor, so I don't have to repeat. As it is, I will probably have to repeat some because I was not able to follow, Your Honor.
No worries.
So can we start at
maybe
least with
after-
this one?
With this particular one, can
Yeah.
you state, it's not kasi in my list, it's not in my list, it's a new amendment. So what was the page again and
It's
line?
on page 31,
Okay, one second.
Mr. President,
Page 31.
line 2,
One second, sir.
page 31,
Line 2.
line 2, section 56,
Okay, please proceed, Your Honor.
after the word government, insert the phrase shall bear the cost of medical care and quarantine expenses. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there an objection from our colleagues? There being none, amendment is approved.
Additional, Mr. President, on the same page, on page 31, lines 22 to 24, after the word technology, delete the rest of the sentence. I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection to the amendment.
Mr. President,
Please,
actually, sorry, as I said, I'm trying to follow. My concern is the previous amendment.
oh, which one? The last one that he mentioned?
The one,
Did he just read?
not the one that's on the floor now, just the previous one after
It was
Philippine government, insert.
Yeah,
Still
page
page
31, line 2.
Yes,
After Philippine government, Mr.
Yes.
Sponsor, you said to put the words,
After the word government, insert the phrase shall bear the cost of medical care and quarantine expenses. Yun
yes,
po yung sinabi ko.
yes. I captured that. In the succeeding amendments, if you could kindly read the entire provision as to how it will read, so it's easy for us to capture the entire sentence. Otherwise, I'm scribbling notes to capture the entire sentence. But on that note, that's why I belatedly captured it. I'm just explaining why delayed yung aking reaction. The Philippine government will carry the cost of care. I think we need to be careful about that because in as much as I would like the Philippine government to take care of all OFWs, even PhilHealth cannot cover all the sicknesses of the Filipinos. So kailangan reasonable po ang expectations natin kasi mahirap pong mangako na hindi naman natin kayang ituparin. So may I suggest that the sponsor revisit that and come up with language that is more reasonable. Mr. President, I was just saying that when you state that the government will handle the cost of care, medyo even PhilHealth cannot handle all, no? Lahat ng may cancer, gusto ko sagutin ng PhilHealth. Lahat ng may renal problems, gusto ko i-cover nila lahat ng dialysis. Pero may hangganan yung kakayanan. So wag tayong magpaasa na hindi naman kakayanin. And my request was to improve the language so that it's reasonable.
To the good, Mr. President, to the good sponsor, we're referring here upon arrival at the point of hire, which is dito sa Pilipinas, up to the seafarers return to the place of domicile. Doon lang po. So pag dumating po dito sa Pilipinas at nag-quarantine siya, halimbawa mayroong pandemic na nangyari, emergency, then the government will take care of all the expenses covered doon sa time na siya ay nasa quarantine. Until siya makauwi. Walang pinag-usapan po rito tungkol sa cancer, tungkol sa chemotherapy or kidney dialysis, etc. Mr. President.
So the obligation of the government is limited to the quarantine because this provision refers to in case of epidemic or pandemic. I do
Yes.
not know what epidemic and pandemics there will be in the future. I am totally unable to predict what kind of care will be required. To say that they will be cared for in quarantine, okay na po yun. Pero all the cost of care, mahirap po yun. Kasi kung lahat yan, mga ilangan na ma-intubate, hindi ho kakayanin yun. Tapos magiging obligation of the state yan and they will not be able to perform. So I am just putting that on record because we have to be mindful of the limitations of the ability of government.
I understand, Mr. President, Your Honor, pero even before doon po sa example ko sa nangyaring pandemic, yung mga returning OFWs, pagdating po sa kanilang quarantine, food, and up to the time na sila po ay mabalik sa kanilang domicile, yan po ay kino-cover na po ng ating gobyerno through OWA. So I don't see any reason bakit natin hindi pagpatuloy yung dati ng ginagawa nating gobyerno. Plus, pagdating sa pandemic, wala naman po siguro sa pandemic na ang naging result after sa pandemic, sila po ay nagkasakit sa kidney, sila po ay nagkasakit sa cancer and all. Ang pinag-usapan lang dito is yung quarantine na habang sila nasa quarantine, yung po i-cover ng ating gobyerno, which ginagawa naman sa sa nakaraang pandemic, Mr. President, Your Honor.
To be clear, Mr. President, hindi ko sinasabing magkaka-cancer sila. Nagbigay lang ho ako ng halimbawa na maski po lahat ng sakit na nagaganap, hindi kayang sagutin ng PhilHealth. Hindi ko ho sinabing magkaka-cancer po yung OFW na nakina-quarantine. On that note, Your Honor, I think it will suffice if the records will bear that this is the reasonable care expected to be given to any Filipino, no, that would have to be quarantined. Reasonable care. Any Filipino. Pareho lang naman ang natatanggap, di ba? I think fair naman po yun. May I ask that the gentleman in the back be conscious that there's a official debate going on here. Sorry, hindi ko lang kasi marinig ang sponsor. Medyo seryosong usapan namin dito.
We'll ask our colleagues to settle down.
Thank you. So with that, Your Honor, I have no amendment. I just wanted, if His Honor agrees with my statement, then that will be on record na yan ang interpretation ng
Okay.
amendment na yan.
Thank you.
Noted,
Thank you.
Mr. President. Pero
Thank you.
just as a point, Mr. President, Your Honor, ang sinasabi kasi namin dito, in cases of epidemic or pandemic as declared by the World Health Organizations, the organization, yun lang po yung Mr. President. Upon arrival at the point of hire, up to the seafarers return to the place of domicile. After that, wala na po. Wala nang obligasyon ng gobyerno sa gastusin kung ano pa man ma-incur. After na siya po ay makatapos sa quarantine and siya po ay naibalik na sa kanyang bahay, labas na po sa lahat ng gastusin ang ating gobyerno. Your Honor, Mr. President.
Thank you.
But however, pwede po. However, para mapagbigyan po, the good senator from Taguig, Sen.Pia, sige, we can compromise by deleting medical care. So it will appear now shall bear the cost of quarantine.
Is that
expenses.
the amendment? You want to amend the amendment that you made?
Yes,
So we'll revisit, we'll reconsider
we
the
will-
previous amendment.
we will reconsider, Mr. President, taking into consideration the suggestion of the good Senator.
So there is a move to motion there not being objected to.
Actually, Your Honor, to
Yes.
further clarify, the paragraph preceding that, the paragraph that, not, yeah, there, okay, section 56 has two paragraphs, no? May I get clarification from the sponsor that the first paragraph of section 56 refers to the ship owner's responsibility for the expense of medical care and board and lodging for periods spent by seafarer in self-isolation or quarantine, until the seafarer has been duly repatriated to the point of hire. In other words, ang ibig sabihin nito ay kung bumabiyahe yung barko at kahit tumigil kung saan mang bansa, it's the ship owner who will take care. Is that correct so far?
That is correct, Your Honor, Mr. President, Your Honor.
And then, sabi in the last sentence of that, in the last phrase of that paragraph, until the seafarer has been duly repatriated to the point of hire. So possible yan, ang point of hire is not in the Philippines, correct? So for example, na-hire siya in Hong Kong or wherever.
No, Mr.
So
President.
what does it mean?
No, Mr. President, point of hire is always Manila, Philippines.
Okay, so in that case, the next paragraph which says, upon arrival at the point of hire, in other words, sa Pilipinas,
Mhm.
up to the seafarer's return to the place of domicile. Ano ba domicile niya? Di ba
Ibig sabihin,
Pilipinas din?
Mr. President, Your Honor, kapag halimbawa siya ay sa taga Davao, so yan yung domicile niya, pero point of hire niya is Manila, Philippines. So domicile is kung saan po siyang probinsya, kung saan po siya nakatira, depende po. Pero kung siya po ay nakatira sa Manila, then wala na, alisin natin, understood na yung place of domicile niya is Manila. Mr. President, Mr.
I note that, but I will put on record something, Your Honor. Just I just need a second to pull up the file.
With a good sponsor, the lady senator, I'll suspend for a minute so that maybe you can just fix the lines.
Okay.
Then we can revisit it. So I'll suspend for just a.
Actually, Your Honor, I can just tell His Honor now my concern if the proper use of if the proper language is domicile or residence. I think it's residence, but that's why I said, let me pull out the file because I will read into the record and His Honor can agree or disagree if residence or domicile is the better terminology to use.
Maybe it's better we just suspend for 1 minute, so. Well, session suspended.
We allowed the presiding. Thank you,
Yes,
Mr.
please
President.
proceed. Thank you very much.
If I may continue what I was saying, I was pointing out that the bill refers to the obligation of the seafarer, the obligation of the ship owner or manning agency to take care, to be responsible for the expenses of medical care of the seafarer when in self-isolation or quarantine until the seafarer has been repatriated to the point of hire. And then the next paragraph goes on to say, upon arrival at the point of hire, which the sponsor said is always the Philippines, up to the seafarer's return to the place of domicile, the Philippine government will take care of his quarantine. I asked if His Honor means domicile or residence, and the sponsor said that he is just following what is contained in the Maritime Labor Convention. But this is a Philippine law, so we have to be sure what we are referring to because under Philippine law, there is a difference between residence and domicile. And the obligation of the Philippine government will be affected if the person does not return to the domicile.
Okay, doon kasi sa contract, Mr. President, Your Honor, nakaspecify point of hire and point of domicile where he or she can choose kung saan siya babagsak at never na ang saan? Kung saan siya babalik in case of repatriation, because we're talking here of repatriation. So therefore, like you mentioned and I've mentioned earlier, sa MLC, Maritime Labor Code 2006, never kasi na-mention doon yung word residence. They always use the term domicile in referring to the seafarer after he or she's been repatriated. So may point din po kayo dahil Philippine law ang pinairal natin dito. That's why much better kung gagamit tayo ng word residence. I see your point. On the other hand, dito po kasi sa MLC, maging dun sa contract nitong seafarer sa SEC, sa Standard Employment Contract, doon po sinusulat niya kung saan ang kanyang permanent domicile, and never na-mention doon ang word residence. Kasi kung maglalagay tayo ng another word doon na wala po sa Standard Employment Contract at wala po sa MLC, medyo magulo po yun, Mr. President, Your Honor.
Well, Your Honor, magulo din po yon if under Philippine law, you do not provide for clarity if you mean domicile or residence. What do you mean, Your Honor? What
Okay.
is your intention? At to what point will the Philippine government be responsible, domicile or resident? What is the intention of His Honor in the draft?
The domicile is same as the address given by the seafarer when he signed his contract doon po sa SEC, Standard Employment Contract. Doon po nakalagay yung kanyang exact address under the word domicile. Ganon din po doon sa MLC, yung word domicile ang means na yun po yung kanyang place of residence. And again, I would like to put it on record na I see your point, Your Honor, na this is Philippine law we're talking about. Dapat under Philippine law, gamitin natin yung word residence. However, since wala naman po yung word residence, maging sa Standard Employment Contract na pinirmahan ng ating seafarer and maging sa MLC, baka magkaroon ng konting confusion doon because two different, dun sa dalawa, domicile always been mentioned and never na-mention yung word na residence. Mr. President, Your Honor.
Do I remember correctly that in the first part of His Honor's answer, he said in the employment contract, he would indicate as his domicile, his what? What did His Honor say? Place of residence, place of permanent residence? What was the statement made?
Your Honor, sa kanyang Standard Employment Contract, again, dun sa part ng repatriation, it refers to the process of returning seafarer to the point of hire or the seafarer's place of domicile. Yun po yung nakaspecify doon sa SEC, Your Honor.
But earlier, Your Honor, you said that the SEC states the domicile as something. You said that. What was that? I'm just asking for
Yeah,
His Honor to repeat that because I will try to help His Honor clarify the intention. If he just repeats, what did you say, permanent residence or current residence?
The place of domicile is the address written by the seafarer as his place of residence.
Okay.
Listed in
Okay.
the Standard Employment Contract, he or she states there his place of domicile as his home address, Your Honor.
Okay, Your Honor, what I am trying to explain is under Philippine law, there is a difference between domicile and residence. So in your standard employment contract, if a seafarer will indicate a particular address and it says domicile, then that is different from residence. If it says residence, then that is different from domicile. And I would insist that Philippine law would govern. So the obligation of government is affected if he will not be able to return the seafarer to the place of domicile, because that is different, that could be very different from the place of residence. So it is important that His Honor tells us what is the intention. Where do you want the seafarer to be returned?
Okay. I thought, Your Honor, my team already talked to your team and they already agreed on that matter.
Your Honor, it is the sponsor and I who will agree.
No,
So,
no, yeah, I understand, Your Honor, but for the sake of brevity or for the sake of na para mapaiksi tayo and
Pero kailangan ho nagkakaintindihan tayong dalawa.
magkakaintindihan tayo, Your Honor, na magkakaintindihan tayong dalawa, Your Honor, bakit natin pinag-aawayan yung domicile and
Hindi natin pinag-aawayan.
place of
Liwanag
residence?
ko lang po ang use of terms natin because they have significance, Your Honor.
What's the significance? What is the significance, Your Honor?
I
What's
think,
the significance
I
of
think-
domicile and place of residence?
I
What's so
think, Your
important?
Honor, your lawyer should be the one informing you what is the difference of domicile and residence. I've already been pointing out that there is a difference. If your team cannot.
But Your Honor, like I said, under the MLC convention provision, domicile refers to the home address. And in the SEC, it's the same when the seafarer filled out his SEC form, place of domicile there refers to his address. In the MLC and in the SEC, domicile means home address.
Your Honor, I am simply informing the sponsor that under Philippine law, there is a difference between
I
domicile
understand, Your Honor, but it is
residence.
already understood under the MLC provision, domicile means home address, and under the standard employment contract, which the seafarer signed, the word domicile refers to his home address.
Okay, so I will ask His Honor a question. When the seafarer indicates a home address, yung po ba kaya ang kanyang temporary address sa Manila o yung po yung kino-consider niyang permanent home niya sa probinsya? Alin kaya ho yun dun?
Yung point of hire is Manila. When you say domicile, yun po yung permanent address niya, Your Honor. As declared doon sa kanyang SEC. Kasi po doon sa SEC, idideklara mo yung iyong home address. At anong nakalagay doon? Domicile. Wala naman nakalagay doon home address. Nakalagay doon domicile.
Your Honor, I am just putting on record that there are legal differences. Huwag ko kayo magagalit. Kasi
No,
ho,
I'm not mad.
may legal
I'm not
differences
mad, Your Honor.
po yun.
But-
Ayoko kung malito ang gobyerno at ang ating
Well, yung
pong mga
gobyerno po hindi
seafarers.
malilito. I'm sure.
Sir,
I
there are
guarantee you, the
legal
government
differences. So if we do not
suspended.
clarify,
Hindi naman natin pwedeng baguhin lahat dahil sa kagustuhan mo para
Session
masuspend yung
suspended.
lighting. Okay, Mr. President, let's put it on record that domicile and home address is one and the same.
His Honor means residence.
Place
Yes.
of residence, just like what you asked, Your Honor.
Yun lang naman po, para maliwanag tayo. Thank you, Mr. President, for the clarification. I will continue to listen to the amendments. Thank you.
You're welcome, Your Honor. I so move, Mr. President.
May I know if this is the new provision that we see on the, parang hindi, kasi may dinilit po kayo and, so hindi pa ito yan. So may I know how it will now read? Because normally the secretariat or the staff would type that out. Or you can also just give me a copy, I don't mind, whatever is
Thank you.
faster.
Kasi kahapon, I was reading it and I was asked by the Senate President para mapabilis. Hindi ko na po kailangan i-read pa yung sinasabi niyo, Your Honor, na this is how it will read, etc., etc. So,
Pero ho, ako kasi sinusundan ko, so
okay.
it is my request that I can
Yes, ma'am.
understand the amendments.
Ibigyan po namin kayo ng kopya, hinggil po dyan.
So what is his honor's preference? Do we wait for me to get a copy or?
The committee secretary will give you a clean copy of that, Your Honor. 1 minute suspension, Mr. President.
Session suspended.
The reason why I used the word domicile and said that it's one and the same, just because or only because in the MLC and the standard employment contract, domicile refers to the home address of the seafarer. But in the definition of terms, we have to separate the definition of domicile and place of residence. Mr. President,
Thank you for that clarification.
Your Honor.
Could you repeat your previous motion, just for,
I'm sorry, Mr.
you
President.
had a previous motion?
Actually, Mr. President, we will await the definition because the word residence, as far as I know, does not appear in the bill. So as to how it will be defined and how it relates to the other definitions in the bill, we will look at it, Your Honor, to help His Honor make sure that it is consistent.
The good senator from Taguig wants us to come up with the definition of terms now where it
No,
will
Your Honor,
appear
at
the
His
word.
Honor's- Mr. President, at His Honor's convenience.
I'm sorry.
I was saying that the definition of terms can be produced at His Honor's convenience. I
Okay.
was simply pointing out that
All right.
the term residence does not appear, but there is a section 28 where it refers to residential address, I think. I'm just pointing that out so that the team that is drafting can take that into consideration.
Okay. If, if the good senator from Taguig would allow us to proceed with the other amendments, and then we can just go back to the issues that are being raised by her honor.
Of course, His
pertaining to-
Honor has the floor. His Honor was making his amendment on section 63,
Okay,
and I was simply asking for a copy so
Thank
I
you.
could follow the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Senator. Thank you. Okay, now, can we proceed now, Mr. President?
Yes, please
Your
proceed,
Honor.
Your Honor.
Okay. Next, Mr. President.
Did His Honor finish the amendment prior, or is this a repetition? Because there was an amendment on the floor.
Yes.
I had simply asked for a copy. The amendment was proposed, Your Honor.
Yes, is this a repeat of the amendment before we suspended?
I'm sorry.
Is this, are you just
This
repeating?
is a new amendment, Mr. President.
So we can rule on the previous amendment that you,
Yeah.
Yes, but I was asking for a copy, Your Honor, and His Honor, we suspended because His Honor
Yeah.
was going to give me a copy. Or put it on the screen, whichever is convenient, whichever is fastest.
Is already being projected even while we speak on the monitor, Mr. President, Your Honor, Madam.
Because Your Honor, you said line 5 and 6 will be deleted and I still have line 5 and 6. So that's why I'm sorry, I'm confused.
There you go. Okay.
Just rather read this.
So the amendment will now read as follows. Domestic seafarers on board domestic ships shall be entitled to emergency rescues in cases of war, epidemics, abandonment, disasters or calamities, whether natural or man-made, and other similar events. And then insert all costs related to the rescue, including transport of the seafarers' remains and personal effects, and the provision of financial security in case of abandonment, as may be applicable to domestic seafarers, shall be borne by the ship owner. The Philippine Coast Guard, PCG, and Marina shall undertake and assist in the rescue of domestic seafarers on board domestic ships. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
1 minute suspension, Mr. President.
Session suspended.
Mr. President, with the permission of the sponsor, I would just like to comment that the amendment that his sponsor made after the intervention of the Senate President Pro Temp, no, clarifying the definition of domicile is a very good definition. I commend him for that. Mas klaro talaga siya, and I'd like the sponsor to know na to begin with, I only pointed that out precisely for the need for clarity. Ayoko ho nang magulo kasi lalong ikagaganda ng bill ng sponsor natin kung maganda yan. At ang akin hong mga comments hindi lang ho dahil kagustuhan ko, katulad po ng sinabi ng ating sponsor. Ikagaganda ho ng bill yan.
I understand, Mr. President, Your Honor. Thank you very much. Kasi pag seafarer ka, dapat physically and mentally fit ka to do the job because the job of a seafarer is not an easy one. Medyo very physical po yun. Should always be up to demands of the job,
Yes.
especially sa sea na kung saan maalon and palagi ka dapat attentive. So therefore, you must be physically and mentally healthy.
Thank you, Your Honor. On Section 21, there is an enumeration of duties of a seafarer. And letter E states to continually improve one's professional competency by keeping up to date with the latest technological and scientific development applied in various maritime fields, continuous education, and keen observation of shipboard activities. I repeat, that is Section
Your Honor?
21, line E, page 13.
Line, section 21,
Section 21, letter E.
letter E.
It is on page 13.
Okay. To continually improve one's professional competency by keeping up to date with the latest technological and scientific developments applied in various maritime fields, continuous education and keen observation of shipboard activities. What is it that you want to amend here, Your Honor?
Yes, so again, I have a question first before I proceed with an amendment.
Okay.
My question po would be a bit technical. Ano ho ba ang current practice ngayon when it comes to professional continuous education? What kind of continuous education? How often? And is it just the officers or is it the non-officers who are also required? And who normally pays for this, Your Honor? Kasi under this provision, it would be the duty of the seafarer. And I want to be sure, I am very pro continuous education, but I would like to know what the practice is. Kasi baka naman yung mga non-officers, mahirapan sila. The minority floor leaders on the floor with us, and he will agree with me that nakakatulong naman yata yung MCLE, yung continuous education naming mga abogado. But lawyers can pay, but many times it is their law offices that would pay for it. So I just want to know the practice sa seafarers para hindi naman po dagdag na bigat ito, although we do really want them to have access to continuing education.
It depends on the kind of ship, Mr. President, Your Honor. Kasi merong ship na kailangan continuous upgrading yung mga seafarers na nakasampa doon para tumugma naman po yung kanyang skills, yung kanyang knowledge doon sa ship na mas mataas ang grade at mas technologically advanced than another ship, Mr. President, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor, but the question was, who pays? What is the practice?
The ship owner, Mr. President, Your Honor, the ship owner.
So that is not clear in this bill, Your Honor. It would appear from my perusal that it is the duty of the seafarer. So kung ang nagbabayad naman ship owner, baka ho pwedeng liwanagin natin at the expense of the ship owner.
I agree, Mr. President, Your Honor.
So may I make that formal amendment that in letter E, which is page 13, line 12 to 14, subject to style, to add the phrase at the expense of the ship owner. But sorry, before I make that formal amendment, may I ask His Honor's resource person, it's the ship owner, no, not the manning agency. So
Ship
the
owner.
okay. So the amendment is at the expense of the ship owner, subject to style, if it's at the beginning of the phrase or at the end.
The manning agency is the representative of the ship owner. Mr. President, because the ship owners are based in abroad and the manning agency is based here in the Philippines, so the Seafarers deals with the manning agency all the time, Mr. President, Your Honor. So, pwede na rin po yung
But I think it's still the obligation of the ship owner, no?
Exactly.
Okay.
Pareho lang po yun, manning agency or ship owner kasi representative po ng ship owner ay yung manning agency. So, pwede natin ilagay manning agency, pwede natin ilagay ship owner as long as hindi po yung mismong seafarer ang magbabayad. So, I think it's suffice.
Is it clear that in our measure that the liability of the ship owner is solidary with the manning agency and also the other way around?
That is correct,
Okay,
Mr. President, Your Honor.
Is it found in our measure? Kasi kung hindi, we are ready to also propose
Meron ba?
a provision to make that very explicit, Mr. President.
I agree with you.
Thank you.
Minority Leader, Senator Coco Pimentel. And you have a point, and I accept.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you, Your Honor.
Mr. President, I made my amendment, but is His Honor sure that the practice is it is always the ship owner? Because I got information from Amosop that sometimes they pass it on to the seafarers. So I'm not trying to reinvent the practice, but of course I would prefer that it is the ship owner. So I think that has to be a judgment call, or I defer to the wisdom of the sponsor kung ano din ang talaga bang sinasabi ng mga resource persons natin.
Is it that you want to amend again, Your Honor?
Mr. President, based on the sponsor's response, that what is the practice? What is the current practice? Who pays for the continuous training? The answer the sponsor gave was, it is the ship owner. So I was already making that amendment. However, I just went out of my way to also ask Amosop, who His Honor recognizes as a leader in protecting the rights of seafarers. And I was told that depending on the agreement, sometimes it is the seafarer who pays. So I'm not trying to reinvent anything, but of course I would like the seafarers not to have to pay. Pero hindi ko alam kung malaking bagay ito sa mga companies. Usually naman daw sila ang nagbabayad. So
Okay.
it appears that,
The
yeah.
common practice, Mr. President, Your Honor, if it's required by the STCW, then it should be the employer, meaning the ship owners. And that is the present setup, Mr. President, Your Honor.
I think, so are we comfortable saying that it is the ship owners that will pay? It will give us leverage in fighting for our seafarers. So that is the amendment, Your Honor.
That is
Subject
correct,
to style.
Mr. President, Your Honor. We already agreed, we already accepted the amendment that you're proposing, that we will put here the ship owner who will take over the charges,
Okay.
President, Your Honor.
There being no objection from the sponsor, the amendment is approved.
I can make the amendment if His Honor would like me to help.
Go ahead, do the amendment, Your Honor. Do the honors.
Yes, Your Honor, my amendment would be to delete the phrase by authorized government medical practitioners and such that the whole sentence would read, all PEME of seafarers shall be performed only in DOH accredited medical facilities following the standards set by DOH.
I accept.
There is
President, Your Honor.
no objection from the sponsor. Amendment is approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. This one is just a clarification. If it is clear to His Honor, then I will not have to make an amendment. Page 14, section 25, on training and qualification. It states only seafarers certified by appropriate government agencies according to the STCW and other applicable international standards shall be allowed to work and be employed on board a ship. Who is this? Who are these appropriate government agencies? Is this clear in the bill?
Section 84, Mr. President, Your Honor.
Section 84 of this bill? My question is it clear in this bill?
Well, it's included in the bill because it's stated on section. Hindi, tinatanong niyo kung nasa bill. No, it's in the bill on section 84.
Page 45.
Ano ba yung section 84? Section 84, page 42. Your Honor. Says here, the following government agency shall perform the following functions to promote the welfare and protect the rights of Filipino seafarers.
Agencies.
Is there,
Paragraph G.
yes, I found it, Your Honor.
Okay.
So according to Your Honor, just for the record, the appropriate government agencies referred to here in section 25 is the Marina, which is provided for in section 84. Are there any other government agencies?
Marina, bukod sa Marina, meron. Include ba dito yung CHED? Also CHED, Your Honor, Mr. President.
Are there any other?
Also the National Maritime Polytechnic, the NMP, Mr. President, Your Honor.
Should I ask again if there's any other? Because when I ask one, there's another. So would you like?
The Marina,
Concern.
the NMPA, the National Maritime Polytechnic, and CHED, Mr. President, Your Honor.
Okay. In that case, would His Honor like to mention these agencies in section 25 because it necessitated consultation with the resource persons to get the answer, and I would just, again, for the same reasons I've been repeatedly mentioning, I just want there to be more clarity. So if His Honor is acceptable, let us just name these three agencies and instead of appropriate government agencies.
Kasi kaya hindi na namin nilagay, Mr. President, Your Honor, training qualifications. Dito kasi sa section 42, nandiyan na po yung role of government agencies na kung saan i-refer dito sa section 25. Pero kung yun ang gusto nyo, pwede namin ilagay. Alang-alang po sa inyo.
Hindi ho, wag ho kayo mag-amend alang-alang
For
sa akin.
purpose of clarity.
Kung saan ho tingin nyo na mas maliwanag.
Maliwanag na nga ito kung tutusin po, Your Honor, Madam. Kaya lang,
Pero ho kasi nung tinanong ko ho kayo, parang hindi pa ho kagad makasagot ang mga resource person. So I wasn't sure if hindi pa clear. But if it's very clear, I will not make an amendment, Your Honor.
Your Honor, the resource persons are the one who gives me advice at sila po ang nagpapaliwanag sa akin tungkol sa mga nakasulat sa bill na ito. And they are the ones that tells me kung ano yung mga pwedeng isingit o hindi amendments dito po sa bill. Now, ulitin ko po for the second time, kasi po hindi nilagay itong yung mga government agencies na binanggit ko kanina tulad ng ST, yung O, yung CHED, NMP, and Marina sa section 25 kasi po understood na yon pagdating sa role of government agencies, nandun na included na yon. But we can accept your amendment.
I did not make an amendment yet, Your Honor. I was just asking a question. And after I heard the answers, I said it's up to His Honor. On that note, hindi ho ba kasama din dyan ng TESDA? Kasi pag narinig ho ni Majority Floor Leader na si TESDA pang nakalimutan natin, baka ho tumakbo bigla dito yon. Ayan na ho, tumatakbo na ho. Kasama ho ba ang TESDA?
Kasama pa rin po sa TESDA.
Ang TESDA po kasama.
Kasama po yung TESDA.
Sige po, I am not making an amendment. I am leaving up to His Honor to make that decision.
If I may just give a
Please
information, Mr. President, it's no longer because it's no longer with TESDA, so it's now with Marina. Your
Eh,
Honor.
so
distinguished
then I have made my point. Hindi maliwanag kung sino hindi
So it's-
kasama, di
I
ba?
checked it, it's no longer part of
Yun,
the draft bill, Mr. President.
Yung TESDA, Mr. President, it says here, the TESDA shall in consultation with CHED and Marina. Pagdating sa training, of course, TESDA kasama in consultation with CHED and Marina. Mr. President, Your Honor.
Senator Joel is the expert, so
I'm
we
also a
defer
bit
to the
confused, Mr.
expert.
President, because if it is program registration, then I'd say yes. And development of training regulations. But if it is assessment, I am pretty sure that it was during my time when it was transferred to Marina, Your Honors.
Well, the provision kasi, Your Honor, that is in, if I may, Mr. President, Senate Majority Floor Leader, the provision in question is Section 25 that says only seafarers certified by the appropriate government agency. So the wisdom we seek from the Majority Floor Leader, former TESDA Director General, is would TESDA be certifying? Because that is the operative word in this section.
I believe the lady senator from the gig just wants to clarify which agencies.
Yes, Your Honor.
Yeah, because it's not very clear.
And I mean, I think this question, the interjection of the Majority Floor Leader precisely illustrates my point, that it should just be clear.
Mr. President, I don't see any harm in this particular provision in this particular provision on page 46, where TESDA, it says, shall in consultation with CHED and Marina develop, establish, and implement non-degree courses and programs on maritime education and other quality technical education and training programs for seafarers who may want to learn new skills or enhance their existing skills. It
So they're
only
not
means,
cited
Mr.
to
President,
develop.
TESDA is in charge of training regulations, of developing programs that will enable to help Marina to be able to implement, Mr. President, what was transferred to them, Mr. President, because the expertise remains with TESDA. So I don't see any problem having this, Mr. President, in this particular measure. Thank you. I hope
But
I was
to be
able
clear,
to help out, Mr.
A
President.
bit, but your task is not yet over. So you have clarified, Mr. President, the Majority Floor Leader has clarified that Section 84 remains relevant.
Yes, Mr.
So
President.
my question is whether the sponsor believes it is necessary to identify each government agency that a seafarer needs to seek certification from. And so when I asked, he mentioned 3, and then I thought of Your Honor, and I asked TESDA, and the answer was yes, but the Majority Floor Leader says no. So that is precisely my point. Baka mamaya, pag pinasa natin to, mag-insist na, "Ay, hindi, punta kayo sa TESDA." If I understand correctly, Majority Floor Leader is saying, no, you don't need to. But the response that I was given just before you walked in
If it
is
is-
papasok si TESDA. So this should be clarified.
If it is STCW, it's no longer with TESDA when it comes to certification. What is stated here, Your Honor, distinguished colleague, is that TESDA remains would remain the certifying body in developing
The
programs.
programs, but
Yes.
not the
Training
individual, but
Yes.
not certifying the
Yes.
individual. They are certifying the
The
programs.
programs, Mr. President.
Oh.
Yes, that's what I
May
mean.
I
That's what
interject?
it means, Mr.
May,
President.
if the agencies are enumerated on section 24, Your Honors, why don't we just put there, we mentioned section 24, or section 84. For example, only seafarers certified by appropriate government agencies.
No, Mr. President, Section 84 includes NLRC. Parang it's it's a basic enumeration of various government agencies. It is not limited to the certification. My only concern, and I will repeat, I leave it to the sponsor. I just don't want that when it leaves the halls of Congress, later on, for example, our expert in TESDA will say, hindi niya job mag-certify, ba't kayo nagpapa-certify dyan? So that's why the intention of the legislative body should be very clear, and that must come from the sponsor.
Mr. President, Your
Yes, Your
Honor,
Honor.
tapos na po yung period of interpellation natin, period of amendments na ito. Sana ang request ko lang po, sabihin lang niya sa akin kung ano yung amendments niya, and I will say whether I accept or not. And if I do not accept it, and I will explain. Ang nangyari po kasi, pina-explain niya muna ako, na bumabalik tayo sa interpellation, and then after ma-explain ko, pwede niyang i-amend at pwede niyang hindi. Napapahaba lang po tayo. Bakit hindi na lang po niya, Mr. President, Your Honor, sabihin na lang kung anong gusto niyang amendment, anong linya yon, and then I'll say accept or not. If I don't accept, and I'll tell the good senator from Taguig why I'm not accepting. Para mapabilis lang po tayo. Kaysa naman po, kailangan pa muna ako magpaliwanag, babasahin niya, kailangan ko pa magpaliwanag, and then hindi siya satisfied sa paliwanag ko, then magkakaroon ng debate. At kapag halimbawa na satisfied siya sa paliwanag ko, then hindi na siya mag-amend. Humahaba lang po tayo, Mr. President, Your Honor. Kung gusto niyo po, maglatag na po ng banig dito. Sa kapunan.
Session suspended.
Welcome to
Session-
legislative work, Mr. President.
No, hindi naman po gagawin.